Like, is it more important to not carry a to-go cup, or is it more important that you can just go to a cafe and get a plastic cup and a plastic lid and a plastic straw every single day of your life and throw it away and feel good about that? Because you're giving that plastic to your great, great, great grandkids to deal with, because that's how long plastic lasts. And when you think about it that way, when you think about it critically, it just simply doesn't make any sense. For something you're consuming for 20 minutes, you're creating plastic waste for the next 250,000 years.
Welcome to Sustainability Transformations podcast, where we discuss bold ideas to drive positive change for people, community, and business. And today we are so pleased to have Joshua with us, who is a pioneer in clean beauty, regenerative entrepreneurship, innovation at over 25 years within that space. Globe-trotter, who is visited over 50 countries in search of the finest ingredients, a passionate advocate, plastic-free packaging, empowering the next generation of ethical business leaders. Thanks and welcome, Joshua. Can you introduce yourself to the audience and what gets you so excited around the areas that you explore, those brands?
Thank you so much for having me, Anuk. Yeah, I mean, for the past 25 years, it's been my passion to bring sustainability into all aspects of the businesses I'm creating, from the packaging. And for the past 7 years, my passion has been creating more plastic-free packaging because, as you know, and probably a lot of your listeners know, the plastic problem is completely out of control. We are dumping 56,000 jumbo jets of plastic into our oceans every single year. And, we have to form systems that are shutting off the hose and not just focusing on cleanup. We have to create systems that are closed loop systems that allow new materials to be created that are used to package products that we're using every day, from the bottles of our beverages to snack packs to the packages we're getting deliveries in. It's really important that we are demanding from the brands that we support to reduce or eliminate all plastic and focus on natural, renewable, recyclable materials. And when it comes to the actual product itself, I am a strong believer in sustainable sourcing of ingredients and really finding people around the world that are passionate about taking care of the planet while they're producing really beautiful ingredients to create our products.
Thanks for that overview. So, first of all, you dropped out of school at 15 and went to build iconic purpose-driven brands. What gave you the courage to be able to walk that path, and what others can learn from that incredible journey?
I would say, I mean, I never really fit into a traditional school system. I really have always loved learning through experience, through doing. And I've had a job since I was 7. So I've worked many different jobs before I became an entrepreneur. And I think it wasn't really about courage. It was just about, this is how I wanted to live my life, meaning I knew that I was not going to excel in school, high school or college, but I really felt like I could excel by going out into the world and just taking risks and managing risks to have experiences and learn along the way.
You often say ADHD is a superpower. How has it given you that creativity or the creative power and leadership as well?
I think that ADHD, when you understand how it works and you understand how you have to live your life to channel that energy, because it's a thing that a lot of people have that creates a lot of energy, but when that energy is not focused, it can be destructive. But when you learn certain things to allow yourself to stay focused, it can be a superpower. For example, organizing your day and organizing the world around you and like how you organize your life and your home has a lot to do with allowing your brain to focus on tasks. But if you kind of live in chaos, if there's messes around you or things aren't organized or you don't know where things are and you don't know what you're supposed to be focused on, you can just get lost in a tornado of different things. But because ADHD does give a fair amount of people a lot of energy, the focus should be to focus that energy on what you're trying to create.
Yeah. One of the key words there is focus, which is needed in any field, whether in work or study or any career path. So that's good. So
But more so
exploring
like
your Yep.
Focus is always the key, but it's a lot of it is curating your environment to allow you to focus, because what a lot of people with ADHD suffer from is chaos. And so they don't have their life around them organized. So it's very hard to focus. When you'll see highly productive ADHD people generally don't have any tchotchkes on their desk or pencils or random things. Whereas people without ADHD, you'll see they have these ornaments on their desk. I was at a doctor's office yesterday, and the administrator had like a million different like anime characters glued onto her screen. And I thought to myself, this person does not have ADHD.
Could the environment, that's space, because there's a lot of time where I've come to realize that not only do I have to consider that I don't have time, but I haven't got the space to be able to. So would that space fit around the environment you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think a lot of it is just removing the clutter. And so that there's nothing else to focus on except for what you're trying to do. Like one of the most productive times that I have is on long flights, because you're sitting in a chair. There's really nothing to do, nothing really to distract you. And so you're just able to focus on your work and get writing done or long form communication.
Yeah, that's good. So you've traveled over 50 countries in search of the ingredients and wisdom, which is an interesting combination. Is there one or two experience that has changed how you see nature and business through those experiences?
I would say yes, for sure. I would say that we just got back from a trip from the Amazon where we were working with a organization, an NGO called Camino Verde, and their process is going into indigenous communities on the Amazon and in the Amazon to help them learn how to take care of the forests that they have and to replant and to create wealth by cultivating plants that people like me want oils from. Pomarosa is one of them. And it was really inspirational because there are people all over the world that are trying to rehabilitate nature. And I think that there is a path for truly regenerative and sustainable business practices that focus on people doing the right thing. And rather than trying to get everything at the lowest margin possible, maybe considering part of your profit and loss statement the loss of natural environments in the ecosystem, and really focusing on ingredients that are regenerative, regenerating the earth or the oceans or the forests or the mountains rather than destroying them.
Is it fair to say that regenerative is one other tool in the toolbox within the sustainability space that makes what we say things have to be sustainable, or you think it's an entirely different aspect?
Well, if we're just looking at the words specifically, sustainability, obviously, the root of it is to sustain, where I think regenerative really means to flourish. So sustainability to me was the first step, making sure we're not making things worse. And regenerative to me means we're making things better from that place.
Right,
And I
right.
think that's how I view when I go out into the world and I'm looking at ingredients. I think to myself, is this sustainable or is this regenerative? And sometimes you have to support what is sustainable so that those farmers or those producers, those distillers can work on becoming regenerative, which I was in the south of France this past summer with some of our suppliers, and they are organic and definitely sustainable, a lot of local production of essential oils, and they are working towards regenerative certification, and they'll have it in the next 2 years. But it's a process. It can't just happen overnight, because when you talk about regeneration in ecosystems, you're talking about decades of work
Yeah.
to see the actual outcomes that you're looking for.
In that case, you are ahead of the curve when it comes to organic, plastic free personal care. Where do you think the beauty industry is at the moment when it comes to that sustainability, plastic free, organic?
I believe the industry as a whole is failing miserably, to be honest. My industry produces about 100 billion pieces of plastic a year. And the truth of the matter is 99% of consumers are not buying a product because it's plastic free. They're buying a product because it works, or they like the way it smells, or some influencer told them to buy it. And I really want to create a new system in which people use to choose the products they're buying and move away from the culture of I saw it on Instagram or the celebrities using it, or I saw an ad to consumers that are really doing a deeper dive into the vote they use several times a day, which is the vote with their dollar. What are they buying? What are they supporting? And really creating a culture of boycotting versus boycotting. And I think that when the world starts to embrace that way of moving throughout commerce, that's when we're going to see real change. Because large corporations aren't going to change until they start losing money. It's a simple fact. They're here to make money. And so they'll start to change their ways when somebody else's business is growing faster because of the choices they made when it comes to sustainability.
I genuinely believe that existing companies usually don't change. If you look at the Kodak example or the Blockbuster example and the
Yeah.
Nokia, there
Yep.
are a common theme where most of these big companies didn't realize that the only way, or one of the ways they had to succeed was to disrupt their own business model and change it completely. The last 30 years will show, or examples will show that companies just haven't got the capability to disrupt their own business model. So having shared that, do you think perhaps new startups could come in to disrupt these existing companies, or is it other education of consumers and so on? I'm curious to know how that could be possible solutions.
I mean, I think everything starts with the consumer because consumers create demand. Entrepreneurs create solutions to that demand. And I would say that if I had to pick a number, 10% of entrepreneurs create products that then create demand. Apple is a good example. But I think the fastest way we can change the paradigm of what's happening in consumerism and the destruction of our environment right now has to come from the consumers, has to come from the bottom. Because if consumers just keep buying garbage that's destroying our planet, 100% guaranteed corporations will keep producing it.
You touched early on around the alternatives have to work, which is very true. So if I use a controversial subject around plastic straws, when alternatives, paper straws were used, the paper straws just didn't work as effective as if you left the paper in the drink. Then,
Yeah.
after a 5 minute chat, even for example, now if I put the paper straw in, I had the conversation. By the time I come back, I can't use the straw anymore. So I'll probably end up going for another paper straw, use twice the straw. It needs to be more effective with the alternative, but there has to be the whole life cycle. So if you use two paper straws instead of one plastic straw, how does those two paper straws, how much more trees compared to the plastic and so on? Again, I'm just giving some random numbers here, but I'm just curious to know what are some of the possible, which I know is very complicated anyway, but I'm curious to know where businesses can have a different mindset or policymakers can have a different mindset to provide solutions that the alternatives are as effective as possible.
I mean, the plastic straw question is often like a sore point for me. And I know you weren't targeting that specifically. Plastic straws make up 0.0001% of the plastic in the ocean. Actually, most of the plastic in the ocean is coming from ghost gear from the seafood industry. So I think it's something like 52% of the plastic in the ocean is literally just gear or nets that were cut off from the seafood industry. And the plastic straw initiative was let's get rid of plastic straws to save oceanic life. Meanwhile, most of the world is destroying the ocean by eating seafood. So, I think it's time consumers take a more educated look at the entire ecosystem of their life. The amount of times I would see a plastic cup with a plastic lid with iced coffee in it with a paper straw. And I would look at this and say, how do people not see this as absolute insanity? you know, because just looking at something from a more critical standpoint, you would think maybe I should bring my own cup, or maybe I should have my own straw, or like in a lot of countries, to go drinks is not even part of the culture. I spent a couple months in Italy last summer and people stop and still have their coffee at a cafe. It was very rare to ever see anybody walking around with a coffee, but it's a culture we created here and it's created an absolute mess. And I think it's something that people have to decide what's more important to them just on every level of their life. Like, is it more important to not carry a to-go cup, or is it more important that you can just go to a cafe and get a plastic cup and a plastic lid and a plastic straw every single day of your life and throw it away and feel good about that because you're giving that plastic to your great, great, great grandkids to deal with because that's how long plastic lasts. And when you think about it that way, when you think about it critically, it just simply doesn't make any sense. For something you're consuming for 20 minutes, you're creating plastic waste for the next 250,000 years.
Now that's good. So you've got the key aspect of we have to put things into perspective from what you've mentioned with the plastic straw example. I didn't know that majority of the plastic in the ocean was actually in the fishing industry. But
And then, and I
again,
mean, most of the other half, I think, comes from like 7 different corporations. It's like Pepsi, Coke, Nestle, Procter and Gamble. They're creating most of this plastic, but they're creating what people keep buying. So if you keep eating seafood and you keep buying products from these big brands, we're going to keep putting plastic in the ocean.
the other part I was trying to touch on was also the visibility. That's perhaps where our focus is going, whether it's intentional, diverting our attention towards the straw and not focusing somewhere else. That
Well, it
is
was all from
also,
that one video. Like the entire plastic straw movement came from one video of somebody pulling a straw out of a sea turtle's nose that got a billion views on YouTube. And
was
so everyone
it?
was like, yeah, it literally is all trails back to that one video because everyone loves sea turtles. But what they don't know is they're killing millions and millions of turtles every year by eating tuna fish and going to sushi restaurants. And so
Yeah.
a lot of times we create these things that make us feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Like, oh, I don't use plastic straws anymore. I'm like, well, that's nice. Did you stop eating seafood? you
Yeah.
know?
So there are some selective picking of what we think would be more convenient to showcase. Okay. So you have a lot of brands misunderstanding what it means to be sustainable. You have different language. Some will say they are green. Some will say net zero. Some will say circular economy. Why do you think that is with different companies explaining or using their brand, the sentiment around their brand when they say they're sustainable, they seem to pick different aspects. I'm curious to know.
I mean, I think it depends on what brands we're talking about. If we're talking about large brands, they're picking the certifications that they think will get them the most sales. When you're talking about small entrepreneur-owned brands, it's generally their passion. Like my brands are plastic free, but being plastic free is not even in the top 5 reasons people buy our product. Our products are plastic free because I want them to be plastic free. And it's important to me because I don't want to wake up in the morning, know I'm creating a living, just polluting the earth. But it's not a decision I made to grow the company faster because it will not. It actually slightly decreases my margins. It doesn't increase them.
Okay, so you've shared that insight. So how do you stay focused, inspired with running multiple brands across various mediums, from perfume to skincare? Yeah, how do you stay inspired and focused?
A lot of coffee, which I have not had today. I've only had chai, and creating systems that allow me to finish one task before I move on to the next. And I'm generally, I think, inspired for different reasons day to day. But as long as the focus is around the core belief systems of the company, I know there's going to be consumers out there that want to support our belief system. As the saying goes, people buy what you believe, not what you make. And I definitely see that with a lot of our customers.
That's powerful. People buying from what you believe. That's good. Clearly, there are opportunities for daily practices. You mentioned about the coffee, but are there other mindset shifts? We talked about the ADHD example about the focus and the environment. Are there any other key mindset shifts in addition to what you've already shared that we haven't covered?
I don't know if it's mindset shifts that I just think that it's important that entrepreneurs find a way to feel inspired because if you don't, you're going to be buried in all the many failures that you have every day. Being an entrepreneur to me means failing over and over and over again without losing your desire to succeed. You can't let failure diminish the want that you have to create something and bring something to market. Otherwise, you'll just never make it. And so I think it's important to really focus on your gratitudes, what you're grateful for, no matter what's going on in your life, and focus on what's inspiring you. And it can't be money because no matter how much you love money, it's very rare as an entrepreneur that money is the ultimate inspiration because I just don't think, even though the world sees it as this all powerful thing, it's just not. It's actually very vapid.
Absolutely, with having a purpose is clearly very useful in any endeavor because without that purpose, staying motivated, being able to persevere, be comfortable with failure, but not just failure, but being able to course correct quickly as possible and from it and see, okay, I turned left, it didn't work there, so maybe I need to look at right based on the data and so on. And sometimes you don't have the data at early stage of entrepreneurship. Suppose as an established business, you have a lot of data points. Your brands have a intentional energy. How does your inner life shape how you lead and create these purposeful brands, you would say?
I mean, I think that like I create brands that emulate how I want to live and how I hope, or at least part of it, hope other people in the future will desire to live with more compassion, more focus on sustainability, more thinking about 7 generations ahead of us. How are the actions that I'm taking today affecting 7 generations? Are they solipsistic? Are we just thinking about ourselves and our own desires and pleasures? Or are we thinking about our lives and the impact of them that is much larger than ourselves?
That's good, which ties into the next discussion around what legacy you want to leave. I know you say you think around several generations, but not only as a founder, but as a human being.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that the things that we're creating inspire other people to, I mean, really exceed our goals. You really hope that what you're creating is just the starting point for something much bigger.
With brands, there are some products where, due to trying to have a sustainable product, go the extra mile means it will come at a cost. And there are some who would argue or suggest that it is okay to have at the early stages, perhaps at a higher cost. So if I take Tesla as an example, where early days is expensive and so not many people can afford compared to other car prices. But over time, due to the network effects, prices generally come down for products. So, how or what are your thoughts on certain sustainable or regenerative brands where the cost may be higher because perhaps of the cost of production or early days? So, I'm curious to know how you juggle that sustainability and price, and hopefully you get more people coming in from a network effect, then the price comes down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is inevitably. I'm working on a project right now where the margins are going to be lower at the beginning. The product is going to be slightly more expensive, but we project by 2027, price will drop about 22% because volumes go up. But the point is, get the product to market and make sure you have enough profit to grow, but baking into your profit and loss statement that you need to inevitably grow your margins as the company grows. And as your margins grow, you'll be able to spend more money on marketing.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with sustainability. Sometimes you can't afford to do everything that you want with the brand. And it's more important to focus on core elements of sustainability and regenerative principles and get a product to market with the idea that you will continually raise your own bar. And I think that a lot of companies do the opposite. They start with all plastic free packaging, organic ingredients, palm free, this, that, and the other thing. And then they see that carrot of money and they bite the carrot and they lower their guard when it comes to sustainability to make more money. And I think that's where entrepreneurs are failing in our world right now.
Good insight with delivering entrepreneurship around those business aspects. So, how do you hope the next generation of entrepreneurs can build on what you've started? Is there that element of those ahead of us have done things that we can build on? And so, within your field, do you see where, if, for example, an entrepreneur was starting today in your field, compared to your many years of experience, where do you think they can build on from where you've started, not just you, but
Well,
within
I,
this
I
space
see
of the
like
brand?
younger Gen Zs and the alpha generations, I definitely see them as more kind of consumeristic anarchists, where they're definitely supporting more independent brands. They're thrifting more often. They don't have any issues with boycotting or saying no to large brands. And honestly, I hope that continues. I hope that the new generations coming in truly understand how much power they have as consumers to shut the systems down that are eroding their futures, and not temporarily, permanently. Because what I've seen in my life is a company will poison people for 20, 30 years and then get caught in a lawsuit and they have to pay a big fine, but consumers go right back to buying their product again. And so they're getting trained that they can do this and get away with it and make money because the customers will keep coming back. I hope that Gen Z and the alpha generations just shut that down. Say, no, it's a one strike, you're out, because these larger corporations know what they're doing. They know they're poisoning the earth. They know they're poisoning people, and they're just waiting and they're calculating their fines in the future and what they can get away with. Because up until now, consumers just forgive and forget and move on. And we need to stop that culture because it's creating really, really bad behaviors in the corporate world.
Um, yeah, I'm curious to know why that is with the Gen Zs and the alphas. I suppose the visibility now compared to 30 years ago, where a lot of information, newspaper, there
TikTok.
were a few people who were controlling access to information. Hopefully, that is a contributing factor.
Social media obviously is changing that, but the problem is there's way more bad information on social media than good information. So I think you really have to be discerning as a consumer of media to dive a little deeper into what you're reading online, especially when it comes to food. The amount of misinformation about food online is just astounding.
As we keep getting close to our conversation, advice do you want to give to business owners or customers? We've discussed a few things, but I'm curious to know what your part and final message is for those who are listening and watching.
I think that it's important to know that the fringe predicts the future. And if you're an entrepreneur and you're creating something, inevitably your number one job is to be a steward for that fringe.
A huge thank you to Joshua for the incredible insights, the time that we've looked at various aspects of the focus, that's, the space, the environment, you know, delivering the brands which are able to not only financially sustainable, but in the future have a long-term view. So there's a host of ideas that we've gone through. So where can listeners find more of your work, Joshua?
So pangeaorganics.com or pangea.organics on Instagram. Alpine.provisions on Instagram is our body and hair care line. And then Uju de Shek is our fine fragrance company. And I would say my Instagram is joshua.scott.onisco. And the new products and new brands that I'm launching can usually be found on there. And feel free to give a follow.
That's good. I'll put a link in the description. And so it should be easy to find those as well. So that's great. Thanks once again, Joshua.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for all the great work you're doing in the world as well.